Okay, welcome back to On the Ball, the video podcast series from the Vanderbilt Sports and Society Initiative. I'm Andrew Maraniss, and our guest today is my friend Tim Gay, who has a new book out about Rory McIlroy. Excited to get into that discussion. Actually, the book comes out in a couple months. Is that right, Tim? In May?
May 13th, to be exact,
To
Andrew.
be
Thank
exact,
you.
not that you're not looking at the
A
calendar.
shameless plug early in the interview. Yeah.
That's right. Um, Tim is author of acclaimed nonfiction related to baseball, World War II, and the Nazis. And I believe this is your first golf book. And we're really
It
excited to
is.
talk about Roryland with you. But Tim, thanks a lot for joining the show.
I appreciate it very much. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Absolutely. And I love your background. Where are you today in the world?
I'm in lovely Vienna, Virginia, where we still have about 4 inches of snow on the ground
All right.
from a storm 2 days ago. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it must be about time for spring training if that's the case. I always
As a matter of fact, it is. And
yeah.
Elizabeth and I are going to go to Arizona here in a couple of weeks. Going to check out the Indian Wells tennis tournament in Palm Springs in California, then swing down to Arizona for a couple of Cactus League games. Really looking forward to it. Never been to Arizona for spring training.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So growing up, I grew up in DC. You know my dad, big baseball fan. We would drive down to the Grapefruit Leagues games in
Right.
Florida for spring training a lot. But then as Brewers fans, we did go to Arizona two or three times and loved it. There's nothing like spring training.
Yeah, can't wait.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to the topic of this book or this discussion, Roryland, the up and down world of golf's global icon. Um, Given the other books that you've written, and like you say, this is your
Sure.
first golf book, what was it about Rory McIlroy that attracted you? That I feel like you have to be obsessed to write a book. You know, you're going to spend so much time and brain power and energy and anxiety on the topic. It has to mean a lot to you. So, what was it about his story that attracted you?
It does mean a lot. Rory has long fascinated me, Andrew. I think he's one of the most interesting people, not just in sports, but in public life today. Naturally charismatic, witty, wonderful with people, very telegenic, but at the same time, troubled from a troubled homeland, and a guy who readily admits to being conflicted in his psychological approach to the game, comes from a very difficult culture, a place that was until very recently dystopian, has a tragic background with the Troubles, as almost all people in Northern Ireland do, but especially the McIlroys and the McDonalds, his mother's family, both tragically enmeshed in the Troubles.
Wow, okay, let's talk about that a little bit. I knew that he had an uncle that had been essentially assassinated during that period, but tell us more about his family's
Yeah,
relationship to
yeah,
the
it's actually a
Troubles.
great uncle,
Great
Andrew,
uncle.
murdered in cold blood at the height of the Troubles, which was my freshman year in college, November of 1972. He was murdered. He was Catholic. He was very ambitious, industrious, a self-taught computer engineer. Think about how many computer engineers were out there in the world in 1972. And he had the goal to move his Catholic family, four young daughters, into a predominantly Protestant upscale neighborhood, which was just not done in the East Belfast of 1972. And tragically, he was murdered basically because he was Catholic, industrious, and upwardly mobile. His mother grew up in a little town called Lurgan, which even in the blood-soaked Northern Ireland of the 1960s and 70s was considered among the most violent places in the country. It was nicknamed Murder Town. And there's an expression that still exists in the north of Ireland: keep your head lower than a Lurgan Catholics. It meant it has sort of a chilling Jim Crow connotation, but it meant keep your eyes fixated on the ground, lest Protestant bullies or paramilitary guerrillas take offense.
And so, you know, by the time Rory is growing up as a kid, what is life like in the area where he's living?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Roy's very fortunate. He was born in 1989, just as the troubles began to abate. In the 1990s, you'll remember the Clinton administration and their special envoy, Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, mediated peace between the warring Protestants and Catholics. That took place in 1998. It's called the Good Friday Accords, reached during Easter week 1998, which was precisely when Rory McIlroy first burst on the sporting scene in Northern Ireland. He won an age 10 and under world championship at Doral in Miami. So all of a sudden, this young freckle-faced kid comes into view in Northern Ireland just as the people of Northern Ireland are voting for the Accords, which remarkably 26 years later are still holding. And Rory has become a symbol of the new Northern Ireland, the reconciled Northern Ireland between Protestant and Catholic, and has been the sort of vessel into which the sports crazed Northern Irish have poured their hopes and dreams. And so imagine the pressure on this young kid, age 9, and as he goes through the ranks of amateur and then professional golf, the incredible pressure on this young man. And to this day, that pressure exists. And Rory is, in many ways, the victim of his own sort of preternatural talent and success. He had so much success in the highest echelons of golf early on, Andrew, in his career. By age 25, he had, basically won 4 major championships and, become the number one player in golf. And everyone thought he was going to take on Tiger and Jack and run up his major championship totals into the double digits. It hasn't happened for a variety of reasons. I think most of them, the psychology we've been talking about.
Okay. Yeah, it's been over a decade since he's won a major.
Yeah, he won 2 majors in the summer of 2014. He won at Royal Liverpool, the Open Championship, and he also won at Valhalla, the PGA. And he had earlier won the PGA Championship at the Ocean Course at Kiawah in South Carolina, and of course, just a couple of miles from where you grew up, Congressional Country Club in Bethesda. And in most of those tournaments, he just dominated the field the way Tiger used to. And everyone felt that he was going to continue to be a dominant player in the major championships for years to come. It just hasn't happened.
Yeah. How has he addressed publicly? You say that, people have invested their hopes in it, like their vision of what Northern Ireland can be, and I don't feel like he talks about it that often. What has been his approach to, you know, politics in sports?
Right. Well, it's interesting for a guy who's been so outspoken on what you and I would consider political issues here involved with the PGA Tour and with the deliberations with the Saudis and the Live Tour. He was, as you know, for several years the voice of conscience of the PGA Tour and far and
Yes.
away its biggest advocate. He has stayed very quiet on the historic and cultural issues that have affected his family. Like the rest of his family, he's maintained a very dignified silence about his great uncle's assassination. But all of that has begun to change. Just last spring, for the first time, he volunteered a reference to the Troubles and to the resolution, the Good Friday Accords, and suggested that the PGA Tour and the Live Tour need to reconcile their differences using the same principled compromise that sort of undergirded the approach to the Good Friday Accords. He did that without being prodded by a reporter, volunteered it all, and it was sort of a remarkable moment. The first time, I think, in his career that he really initiated a discussion on the Troubles.
Okay. Okay. And then you mentioned the Live Tour. Like I feel like he's been clearly on both sides of that. And most recently quoted as kind of being okay with it because he's making more money. It didn't seem like a very noble answer. Like, what is
Yeah,
your take on why he's shifted his opinion there?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's one of the reasons that people scratch their heads so often about Rory at the beginning from 2021, from the time the uh, first Greg Norman led competitor surfaced. He was a very outspoken opponent. He continued to be outspoken through 22 and 23, right up through the June 6th, 23 announcement that floored everyone when Jay Monahan, out of the blue, announced that they had reached some accommodation with the Saudis and would be sort of working with them in concert in the future. It very much caught Rory flat-footed. The rug was pulled out from under him. I think he was very angry and bitter about that. Rory has a tendency, and it's not just with the live tour, it's with other issues, of changing his mind and being just as outspoken about his new position as he was about his old, but not necessarily communicating why he changed that position the way he needs to. And that's certainly been true on Live, where he's really become probably the leading advocate now of some rapprochement, of some accommodation moving forward. But he hasn't really explained exactly why he arrived at that position. And he was so outspoken, so critical of his colleagues who jumped to the Live Tour early on. And he really climbed out on a limb in 22 and 23, Andrew, and kind of ended up sawing off that limb in ways that have really sort of hurt his credibility and stature. It has upset a lot of his colleagues. He said in 23 that he was going to take himself out of the whole live debate. Then kept on insinuating himself back into it, being critical of what Patrick Cantlay and Jordan Spieth and others who are on the PGA advisory board, what they were saying and doing. He wants very much for reconciliation to take place so that the world's best players play the world's best courses together and in some unified tour.
You mentioned his tendency to change his mind. It's happened in his personal life, right? Where he was about to get married, it's called off, does get married to another woman. There's an announcement that he's getting divorced, and then announcement they're reconciling. Can you talk to us about his personal life and those
Yeah, it has
relationships?
not been the smoothest of things for Rory. Back in 2014, he was engaged to Caroline Wozniacki, then the number one women's tennis player in the world, and they spent 5 months engaged, and he called it off after wedding invitations went out. Sort of caught her completely by surprise, led to a very difficult period for him personally. But strangely enough, it was the summer when he was so brilliant on the course. Rory seems to be very good at playing extremely well when his personal life is experiencing some bumpy moments. So that was 2014. A couple of years later, he got engaged to an American, Erica Stoll, who was the PGA of America employee who you will recall saved Rory's bacon at the 2012 Ryder Cup when he very nearly missed his tee time. Had Erica not noticed that Rory had not been at the course and not checked in and not investigated it, Rory would have missed his tee time, which, as I say in the book, would have been one of the biggest gaffes in sports history and would have completely changed his sort of brand reputation.
Wow.
Um, he Last spring, this was right after he beat Xander Schauffele by shooting 808 holes at Quail Hollow down in Charlotte. The day after that, that was Mother's Day of last spring, he announced that he was seeking a divorce from his wife of 7 years. And then the 48 hours before the US Open started a month later, they announced they were reconciling, and they've stayed reconciled since then. So it's obviously a very sensitive topic, nothing we should be talking lightly about. None of us know what he's gone through, what they've gone through, but it is kind of typical of the bumpy life that Rory leads.
His little close
That's
friends,
why I
like,
call it the up and down. He has
yeah,
up and down.
a double
He
meaning with the golf term too. So,
Yeah, it's what you and I are so lousy at on the golf course.
right.
A professional golfer needs to be good at, which is getting up and down. And in regular tournaments, he's very good at getting up and down. Not so good in the clutch in major championships over the last decade.
What are his relationships like with other golfers?
For the most part, very good, and that's reflected in the success he's had in recruiting people to play in his TGL league, the indoor virtual league that he's doing right now with Tiger, and it made its debut about a month ago, and it's doing okay. I don't think viewership numbers are great, but it's doing okay, and I've tuned in a little bit. I'm not sure it's going to make it over the long haul, but I think it's so far people have liked it. He's had success there. He's got strained relations because I think he was too outspoken, too extreme on Live, much too critical of his colleagues who understandably found it hard to turn down big money. But
Okay.
Rory, to his credit, turned down not just big money, mega big money, something approaching $1 billion he turned down in bonus money had he jumped to Live.
Mhm. Let's talk a little bit about his golf. Um, he was a prodigy. Were his parents golfers? How did he pick up the game? How did he become so good so young?
Yeah, he was very fortunate. He came from a golfing family. His grandfather, who was one of the very few Catholics hired to be a worker on the shipyards in Belfast, made enough money to move his family out to Hollywood, which is a beautiful little suburb north and east of Belfast. And they had the Hollywood Golf Club, which was ecumenical, and blue collar Catholics like Jimmy McIlroy could join, which he did, became a good natural player. His son, Jerry, Rory's dad, is a beautiful swinger. I'm sure you've seen him at various, pro-ams over the years. Has just a beautiful natural golf swing, was able to implant that in his son. Rory was an amazing prodigy. People at Hollywood Golf Club tell stories about him driving the ball 60 yards as a 3-year-old, playing par golf as a 10 and 11-year-old. As I said, won the a world championship at age 9, beating older kids at Doral. Um, has as beautiful and natural a golf swing as you could ever want. He plays golf with the grace and style that Roger Federer used to play tennis, or Ken Griffey Jr. used to play baseball. It's both Rory's blessing and his curse, Andrew. He makes an impossible game look easy. And because he makes it look so easy, people think, and Rory thinks, he should win more and should have won more major championships than he's won. But, golf isn't about beautiful swings. It's about the grind of getting the ball in the hole, especially when you've made a mistake on that hole. And Tiger was so fabulous, as you can remember, getting up and down. Rory, a little less fabulous, especially in the clutch. But when it comes to the pure full swing, he is not a large guy. He's listed at 5'9". I think that's generous.
Hmm.
He can just crush a golf ball. And if you've never seen it, you've got to go to a tournament sometime, stand on the tee box, or watch him on the range. And it's just an absolute joy to watch that guy launch a golf ball.
What was the research like for this book? Who were you able to talk to? Where did you go? Where did you get your best material?
Yeah. Had just a fun couple of years, got to talk to dozens of very gifted golf writers, correspondents. Um, Also got to go to about a dozen different tournaments here in the States, and got to go to the Canadian Open in Hamilton, just a fabulous golf course. And also had the honor of going to Royal Liverpool for the Open Championship in 2023, the one that Brian Harman won. And I got to hang out. I got friendly with a number of very prominent golf journalists, and had the honor of hanging out at a couple of pubs in Liverpool with these guys. And my favorite moment came the night before the tournament started, the championship started at Royal Liverpool. We were hanging outside a bar, and this is with the Golf Channel and NBC guys. And we all went around the bar identifying who we thought would win. The consensus was Colin Morikawa. I guess Shane Lowry because Shane and Roy had played two practice rounds together, and I had followed them hole by hole for the previous 2 days. And Shane did not miss a shot, was making every putt in sight. Both Morikawa and Lowry missed the cut. So it shows you what so-called experts know about golf. But the book itself was unauthorized, Andrew. In other words, Roy did not cooperate, and in fact, kind of went out of their way not to cooperate. Made sure that I did not talk to any member of the inner circle. But I spent an entire week in Hollywood, in his hometown, and talked to dozens and dozens of people, some of whom knew Rory from the old days. Others just had, impressions. And I bought a lot of Guinness and a lot of pubs in Hollywood.
Not a
It
bad
was a fun week.
expense. Yeah. Um, so there's that old saying that the smaller the ball, the better the writing. You've
Right,
written about baseball, which has pretty small ball, but golf ball obviously smaller.
right.
Um, did you notice any difference writing about a different sport or about writing about a living subject as opposed to some of the historical subjects you've written about in the past?
Yeah, there's definitely a big difference, and you know this from your experience, Andrew. Though, and if you're writing somebody about somebody who's still with us, it's different. People are reluctant in some cases to share opinions. Some are not reluctant to share an opinion as long as it's not attributed to them. So, no shortage of people who want to talk off the record, a shortage of people who want to talk for attribution. That makes it just a totally different experience. And you're absolutely right. It was the great George Plimpton who said, smaller the ball, better the writing. And in my experience, you can't beat, and you know this, you can't beat hanging out with baseball correspondent guys. They're just the best storytellers in the world. And that's absolutely true too of golf writers. They just love the game, know its history, appreciate its traditions, and they loved Rory because he played with such panache in those early major championships, and they would love him to get that back. And they're all in their own way kind of rooting for him to do it because they love watching him play golf the same way that you and I do.
Yeah. And we mentioned there's a lot of people rooting for him, but in reading about the title, and I'd love to hear more about why you chose the title. You say he's a man without a country. Like, um, can you explain more about why that's the case?
Yeah, Northern Ireland is a strange beast, as you know, Andrew. It isn't really a country. It's still part of Great Britain, and amazing that we're now more than a century into the founding of Northern Ireland, and it's still tethered directly to London. That may change in our lifetime, given the opposition to Brexit and the now sort of fairly widespread recognition that economically the North has greater ties now to the Republic of Ireland down south than they do to the United Kingdom. But it's still 25 years, 26 years here now after the Good Friday Accords, still a place that is healing. It has the highest incidence of post-traumatic stress of any place in the world that keeps track of societal disorders. Rory, as I say, grew up really without a country. He once admitted he does not know the lyrics to either Great Britain's God Save the King or the Soldier Song, which is the national anthem of the Republic of Ireland. He's always been reluctant to embrace the Irish tricolor. Do you remember the moment at Zurich, at the Zurich competition, the two-man team competition in New Orleans last spring when he was on stage with Shane Lowry? This is a very popular moment on YouTube. You can call it up. Um, they were doing karaoke, singing Journey's "Don't Stop Believin'," and somebody threw the Irish tricolor on stage. and Shane picked it up. Shane's a proud citizen of the Republic. But before he hoisted it up high for everyone to cheer, he looked over at Rory, and Rory very discreetly shook his head, and Shane gently tossed it back into the crowd. That's how all these years later, even at age 35, Rory is reluctant to be seen embracing the Irish tricolor. Just very strange.
Wow. Well, it sounds like a fascinating book for golf fans, non-golf fans, fans of good writing and history. And so, tell us again when it comes out and where can people go to learn more about the book or to follow you?
Thank you. The official publication date is May 13th. It's already available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. It's Simon and Schuster is the distributor. Regalo Print is the publisher, and I think you can order it on the Simon and Schuster site as well.
Oh, that's terrific, Tim. Well, you're a prolific author. You've been a good friend, and I'm really happy to have a chance to talk to you and to let the people know about this book. So I'll be looking forward to the pub date. And if you're ever down in Nashville, please let me know.
Yeah, I'd be honored. I've only been to Nashville once in my life, and I've only been on the Vanderbilt campus once.
When was that?
Oh, years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago. But I
But
know
this,
about Anchor Down, and I know one thing
that's
about
right.
Vanderbilt. Oh, okay. See, I don't even know that. I know one thing about Vanderbilt golf. Brent Snedeker, there. That's it. That
Yeah,
exhausts
well,
my
we've
knowledge.
got
Commodore Golf.
great men's and women's programs here. A lot of up and coming players that are going to
Yeah,
make
I
a lot
bet.
of noise. So, great talking to you, Tim, and congratulations again.
Thanks, Andrew. Much appreciated.
All right,
See ya.
take care.